Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Rene and I'm an adoptive mama of an adorable 2-year-old little boy. I did adopt him out of foster care, and today we are going to be doing a Q&A of your guys' questions. So I posted a community post earlier this week and I asked you guys to ask me any questions about me, my family, foster care, adoption, and y'all had a lot of great questions. I have about 15 here that I'm going to answer. But if you have more questions or things that you feel like were not answered, definitely leave them in the comments below. I can do another Q&A video. So if you have any more questions after you've watched this that you feel like you'd like to have answered, definitely leave them in the comments below and I will check them out and get you guys some answers. All right, awesome. Let's go ahead and get into it. If you see me looking down, I'm just checking out the questions here. All right, so question number 1 was, were my parents supportive of my decision to foster? So if you're new here, just a little background. I did start this journey as a single foster parent, and I was also very young. I believe I was only 22 when I started the process. So yeah, my parents, I won't say that they were not supportive, but they were definitely a little bit shocked and kind of tried to not talk me out of it, but maybe just, I think they were concerned that I didn't really know the reality of the situation, or that I was kind of looking at it in an idyllic way. Which I think is just very common of parents in general. I think they always are just thinking like, oh, they don't really understand what's going on here, like my kid. But I did, but it's fine. So no, they weren't completely 100% supportive. They definitely were like, oh my gosh, like I remember they would bring up like, you're never going to be able to meet anyone if you start fostering. Like nobody will ever want to date you. You'll never like be able to start a family of your own. And, you know, my mom especially was like, you know, I've always dreamed of you having biological children. Like, I don't know, like if you want to go down this path. And my mom did have a negative adoption experience in her family. So I do understand like where she was coming from. And my dad's grandparents did foster. So I think my dad was a little bit more knowing what it had to handle, but then same thing. I think they both were just like, you're really young, like to be making this big decision. So I think they were more like worried for me than anything else, but I definitely wouldn't say they were like 100% supportive either. So kind of in between there. But if you're somebody going through this and they're kind of worried about telling your parents, I would just do your research, be prepared to answer any questions, and be open-minded. You know, they're going to be worried for you. It's definitely an untraditional way of going about things. And that doesn't mean that it's wrong. Obviously, it's the best decision I ever made, but you know, just be prepared. There's going to be some questions, there's going to be some concerns, and just kind of meet that with an open mind and an open heart, and be willing to kind of work with them and let them know, and also be confident in your decision too. So that would be my advice for anyone who's going to tell their parents about their decision to foster, especially if you are young and single like I was. The next question that people had was, have I ever gotten any inappropriate questions about my interracial family? Yes. If you are someone who's thinking about fostering interracially or adopting interracially, you will get comments. It's sad, but you know, when you're going about things untraditionally, there's always going to be people who are curious or might be judging you, or are just really just wondering about what your family's about. Pre-COVID life, when I used to go to the grocery store with my son, who is Black. If you didn't know, my son who I've adopted is Black. And we would go out, and obviously, I mean, I'm white, red hair. He's obviously not my biological child. And I would have people all the time who'd come up to me and ask, you know, are you his nanny, or are you watching him, or is he yours? Which is really a super rude question, especially from someone who's a complete stranger who's literally just like shopping for bread next to you. But yeah, you will get comments. For most people, it's just being curious. It's not with ill intent. However, I have had some negative experiences as well. I think I've talked about this before on my channel, but we did have an experience once with a Black man actually. And he accused me and my partner Ryan of kidnapping Darian. He was like, oh my God, 2 white people with a Black child. Like, I'm gonna call the police. He's taking pictures of us. So that was a really negative experience, but that's just kind of, unfortunately, the reality. If you're going to go down that path of interracial adoption or interracial fostering, you know, you're going to have questions. You're going to have people who say things they shouldn't or do things they shouldn't. So really just be prepared for that. I think it's good to kind of know what you're going to say to those questions. You know, how are you going to answer if they say, is he yours? What are you going to say if they ask if you're his nanny? You know, what are you going to do if someone accuses you of kidnapping your child? You know, I always have his like copies of his adoption paperwork with me. Obviously I've got pictures of him with me since he was like 5 months old, but I always have that proof, because if anybody ever accuses me of that, I don't want there to be any doubt whatsoever when the police show up that I'm not his mom. So that's just a little bit of an extra step that you have to do. And it's really sad that, that's the case just based on looks. It's not that my child was screaming or like anything like that. It's literally just like, your kid looks different than you. Is he yours? So yeah, you do get inappropriate comments, and I have experienced that. So I'm not going to sugarcoat that. That definitely is something that happens. And I would just recommend just being prepared for that. The next question is, how did you know you were ready to adopt? With Darian specifically, I really felt like his mom after like the third day I had him. The first few days I fostered him, it definitely felt more like I was just babysitting. I hadn't really bonded with him yet. But by the third day, I was like, oh, this is my baby. If they let me, I will adopt him. So for me, it actually happened pretty quickly. But I think it's really just dependent on the child, especially the child's age. Sometimes with younger children, it can be a quicker bond. But, I've also heard people feeling that way with older children too. So I think it's just dependent on the child and whether or not you guys were really meant to be together. As far as like the responsibility of adopting, I didn't really want to start fostering unless I knew that I could adopt if I wanted to. So I kind of already had that in place. But I don't know, I really think it's just based on the child. When you love a child and know that, you want to care for them forever, you just make it happen. You just make it work. It's kind of like if you got accidentally pregnant, you would and you wanted to keep the baby, you would just figure it out. And it's kind of the same with adoption. When you've decided to make that commitment to that child, you kind of just know. And I know that's not really like an answer, but that's really how it was for me. And I always knew I wanted to be a mom, so that was never a question. And, I just think it was meant to be. I think me deciding to become a single foster parent and stuff was kind of crazy. But I really think that the universe just knew, like, this is what you're supposed to be doing, and you're going to get this baby boy, and he's supposed to be yours. I don't know. That's just kind of what I believe. But the next question is, did people tell me I was too young to foster? Definitely. Friends, family, I already kind of talked about my parents, but there was definitely a lot of comments of like, wow, like you're really young to be making that decision. Specifically, I remember being at my OBGYN office for like a yearly checkup or whatever, and I was telling her about my decision to foster, and she kind of tried to talk me out of it. She was like, you're really young to like be putting yourself in that situation. Like, you don't want to be in a situation where they're asking you to adopt and you feel pressured into it. Like, she really was kind of negative about that. So yeah, you will have people who say that you're too young or too inexperienced or, whatever, you're not married, you don't have a big enough house. There's always going to be 1,000 excuses for you not to do something for anything in your life. And I think if it's something you really want and something you feel confident in and you've done your research and you know that you have the skills and finances and everything else to do it, you just have to do it. Like, you can't make your decisions based on everyone else approving of them, because then you'll literally never get through anything in life. So yeah, there's definitely people who said I was too young to foster, for sure. The next question, how will I ensure that Darian will have Black influences in his life? This was a great question, and I actually want to make a video specifically on how to kind of encourage your child's culture when you're adopting interracially or transracially. But specifically with having Black influences in his life, I just try to be really mindful of that. For example, we just bought a house, and, when we were looking for houses, I would look in the neighborhood and I would see if there's going to be people who look like him. And I would look up the schools and I would see what percentage of kids in those schools are Black. And when I would look for daycares for him, I would try to find daycares where he would have Black teachers or other Black students. So really, it's just about being mindful, and that seems like something you never really think about prior to this, but it is very important that he has others who look like him in his life, and he has positive influences that are Black, especially when there's so much negative media going on with that right now. I want him to have positive experiences with other, kids and adults who look like him. And that really just is very important to me. So that's something that I do. And of course, I'm very, very lucky. I live in a very diverse area. So I have a lot of friends who are Black, and we already have a lot of people in our life who are Black. So he's, certainly not in a completely whitewashed world, but it is important to be mindful of those things. And like I said, when you're making those decisions about what schools they're going to go to and where you're going to live, and, whether or not you have a white doctor or a Black, pediatrician, it's things to think about. Not to say that every single, teacher and person and doctor in his life needs to be Black, but just being mindful that he has people and influences around him that look like him and are going to be positive influences for him. So that's kind of what I'm doing so far. Obviously, I'm early on in this journey, and I'm sure I still have a lot to learn, but that's kind of what I'm doing so far. What resources are available for families raising Black children when that is not their culture? Again, I'm kind of in the early learning stages of this process, but there are lots of books on, transracial adoption, and, there's lots of books about just talking about race in general. I think that's a really big first step. I think, acknowledging the talks about race and knowing how to have those conversations with people, because I think that's one of the biggest problems, in my opinion, in our country, is that we don't talk about race enough. And I think some of that is, like I teach middle school, and a lot of my middle schoolers are afraid to even mention race. Like when they see my son at the beginning of the year, they're always like hesitant to ask if he's adopted or hesitant to ask if he's Black, because they think that it's like offensive to ask that. And so I think there's a really fine line with that. Like, people don't want to be offensive, but then they shy away from ever even acknowledging or talking about it. And that's not good either. So I think just reading those books, and there's obviously blogs and YouTube channels out there of people who have transracially adopted. So I think and you can also find groups around you, of transracial adoptions. I've actually just joined a group that's for transracial adoptive parents. So I think just reaching out to those resources that are in your community. And then if you don't have any in your community, then look online, blogs, YouTube channels, read some books. I think all of those are a great place to start. Many cities will have like community centers or groups and stuff for things like transracial adoption. So just look around you and, once again, keep an open mind and open heart. And there's probably more resources around you than you would think. But that's definitely something that I'm still kind of on my journey of discovering, for sure. Do I want more kids? Yes, definitely. I grew up with 5 siblings, and we were all very close, and I loved having a big family. So I want that for my children as well. I do not want Darian to be an only child. And that's actually why we're not currently trying to foster and adopt at this exact moment, because foster and adoption is not guaranteed. It is not something that just happens automatically. I got very lucky with Darian that he was an became an adoptive placement as time went on. But many placements, don't. A lot of them, which is good. A lot of them reunite with their families or stay with kinship placements and like that. And I wanted Darian to have a sibling that's close in age. So we are actually probably planning on having a biological child next, and then maybe we'll continue fostering and adopting down the road, because I definitely want to continue that. Which kind of goes into my next question, which was, how many kids do I want to have/adopt, and do I want a large family? And have I always known that I wanted a large family? So yes, I've always known that I wanted a large family. I've always wanted to be a mama. I've always wanted lots of kids. I've actually always even wanted to adopt. When I was in elementary school, I wrote a paper about what my dream family would look like, and I wrote in there that I wanted to adopt a baby. So I think that's always kind of been on my heart. And I think part of that is from my own childhood experience. I already mentioned that my grandparents were foster parents, but then my family, when we were younger, we helped this mom who was adopting internationally. She adopted a baby, and something about state lines, they had flown in with the baby into Arkansas, which is where we lived at the time. And she couldn't leave the state for a couple months or something because of the way the international adoption was working. So she had to stay with us for a few months, and we got to see her and her baby. And that was kind of the first time I had seen kind of an interracial adoption, or really adoption of any kind. And I think that had a really huge impression on me. I was only probably 6 or 7 at the time, but I think from that moment onward, I knew that I wanted to adopt. And then, of course, again, I was exposed, to children in foster care through my grandparents all growing up too. We used to go to the children's home where they worked every year for Thanksgiving. So I think all of those things kind of influenced me on this path in my life. And so I always knew I wanted kids. I always knew I wanted to adopt. I always thought that I'd probably have biological children too. That became less and less important to me as I got older, though. And then it became more I don't really care where they come from as long as I have kids. But I definitely do not want an only child. I definitely want more than one. I don't really want to put a number on it. When I was younger, I used to joke around and saying I wanted 6 or 8 kids. And I don't know if that will ever happen, but I think Ryan would probably prefer more a number around 3 to 4, but we'll see how we feel as, every time you add a child on, it kind of changes how you feel. So definitely want more kids. I think I definitely want at least some semblance of a large family. I don't know if we're going to have 12 kids or anything crazy like that, but definitely more for sure. And I think that will hopefully be a mixture of more adoptions / more biological children. I think it'll just depend on how life goes, but that is the plan for now. What is dating in foster care like? So I actually made a video entirely about this called Dating in Foster Care. So if you want to watch some more in-depth stuff about that, I'll leave that linked below. But basically you can date while you're a foster parent. I think really the only thing that changes is you kind of have to keep your social worker in the loop if it's a person who's going to be around your child or somebody who is becoming more and more serious part of your life. Because you'll need to get them on like the frequent visitor form, and they'll need to get fingerprinted and that kind of stuff. Obviously, not everybody wants to date a single mom and even a single foster mom. So, you'll have to find the right person, but that's not discouraging at all, because I wouldn't want to date somebody who wasn't, okay with all of this. So to me, that just helps narrow down the ones that I really want to date. So you absolutely can date. Obviously, you'll need to figure out things like babysitters for date nights and things like that. So it's just a few extra considerations, but definitely can happen. And like I said, I have a video all about that. So if you want like a lot more specifics on that, you can go down there and watch it. What are you looking forward to in raising your son, and what are you afraid of? I thought this was a great question. And she put specifically like as an adoptive mom. And for me, I think what I'm looking forward to the most is I feel like our family, just being the way that we are affecting everyone around us in a positive way. And like an example of this, like one of my family members had someone that they worked with who was always making very racist jokes, and they would always kind of laugh it off like, haha, it's just a joke, it's not a big deal. And my family member would always be like, hey, like I've got, this wonderful, son who's in our, our family, and, I'm not really okay with you making jokes like that. And they would always just kind of shake it off or whatever. But then when all of these Black Lives Matter protests last summer started happening, that person actually reached out to my family member and was like, hey, like I just want you to let you know that, Darian and your family has really changed my mind on all of this, and I realize I'm part of the problem, and, I need to fix myself, basically. And so I think that's just amazing that just by people knowing us and seeing us, we're already changing some people's minds and hearts for the better. So I love that I get to kind of be a part of that just through Darian. And then I also kind of get to be just an example of adoption and, foster care in general, because there always needs to be more awareness of that. So that's something that I'm experiencing now and continue to look forward as, we get older and know more people and influence more people. I think that that's just something really neat about kind of being in untraditional families. You get to kind of show the path and show the way for others. So that's something that I always really look forward to. Something I'm afraid of, I don't know that I want to say afraid of, but just, it's always unknown waters when it's your first time adoptive mom. So, I'm interested to see the conversations that I will have with Darian about race and adoption as he gets older. Obviously, he's almost 2.5 now, so he hasn't really asked or had any questions about that so far. And obviously, we're being completely open, and we read books about that, and we talk about it, and it's not a secret or anything like that. But he just hasn't really had any interest or questions about it yet. So I'm not, like I said, I'm not really afraid of that, but maybe just interested to see where some of those conversations go, and kind of how that affects him in the future. So I do worry sometimes, it's always hard a little bit when you're a little bit of an outsider. And I think, being adopted, and especially in a transracial family, that does affect you. No matter how wonderful or open or educated, I am, it's always going to be a little bit different than it would be if he was in a biological family. So, I think that's just something to be mindful of for sure in the future. When did it sink in that you are now the mom of Darian? So I think for me, like I already said, by about day 3, I felt like his mom. But as far as in terms of like knowing he was gonna be mine, I knew pretty early on that he was going towards adoption. I mean, I think I had him for about 6 months before they started talking to me about him potentially being an adoptive placement. But I don't think it really sunk in that he was going to be mine forever. And I don't think I really let that completely sink in. I think I had a little bit of a wall just in case. But I think when I got the call for his adoption date earlier this fall, that was a really emotional call. And I got it at work, and as soon as I like heard like we have an adoption date, I like immediately started bursting into tears because it became real. And it was like, nothing's gonna happen now. Like, we have a date, no one's gonna change their mind. They're not gonna like take him away from me last minute like they have. Like, I don't know, I think I finally let myself relax once I heard that we had a date, and it was only like a week and a half away. So at that point, so I think that's when I really fully let myself just relax and know like he is mine 100%. Like, he definitely felt like mine from really early on, but that was like the time that I finally let my guard completely down and was like, okay, like, he is mine. He's gonna be mine for sure. So that was really special. And it's funny that that happened with the call, because I didn't even feel that way on the day of the adoption. Like, I felt that way with the call, and I don't know why, but I did. What challenges come along with fostering that you didn't expect? So I did make a video about this. It was called 15 Surprises from Foster Care, and I actually think that's one of my more helpful videos. So if you've not watched that one, I definitely recommend you go check it out. There were so many things that surprised me about foster care, and like things that were challenging for sure. But honestly, I think the biggest like shock factor was really just becoming a mom overnight. Like, it really didn't have anything to do with fostering. I think it was just like lifestyle change when you have a baby all of a sudden. You know, and it was just little things. It was like, oh, it's 10 o'clock at night and I really am craving ice cream and I wish I could go get some, but I can't because my baby's asleep and no one else lives here. Like, so it was like little things like that, but that changed my life a lot. I think one thing I really didn't expect that was hard, especially at first, was him coming into care so sick. He was very, very sick when he came into care. He had like 3 different things. He had like croup and bronchitis and running like 104 fevers. And like, I had to take him to the hospital. It was awful. But that was really hard for me for work because I was a nanny at the time and having to take several days off for that. And he couldn't go to daycare because he was sick. And I think that was something that didn't really occur to me. Like, it kind of did, but like, I guess I just thought like, oh, he's going to go to daycare. Like, it's not going to interfere with my work at all. And I think it occurred to me like, oh, he might get sick occasionally, but he was sick a lot. And that was something I think I didn't think of. And I think that's pretty common for children coming into foster care. You know, experiencing trauma can make kids sick. Having extreme changes in routine and dietary habits and things like that can make kids sick. And then starting new daycares can make kids sick. So I think that was something that was probably one of the biggest surprises and hardest challenges for me, was just how sick he was all the time. It turned out later on, if you guys have been following my channel, that it was being caused by a dairy allergy. He had a very weird reaction to dairy. But yeah, I would say that that's definitely something that can happen, and to just have a plan for it, because I didn't have a plan for it. I think I was being overly dependent on daycare. And so if I could go back in time, I would have arranged for some backup plans. But it all worked out in the end, but that was definitely a big challenge at the beginning, for sure. What general advice do I have for single foster mamas? This is so hard. I mean, I feel like my whole channel is basically advice for single foster mamas, but I think kind of what I was going to before, just having a backup plan, like when it's just you, like, you know, what happens when you are like down with the flu and throwing up? Like, is there going to be somebody there that can help you? You know, what happens when you're having to miss work for a whole week because your baby's in the hospital? You know, there's so many things to think about when it's just you. I think if you don't have family nearby or something like that, you know, you need to find something, a backup nanny, I don't know, a friend. You have a friend that can get licensed to help watch your kid for you. Like, I think having that set up can help you a lot. I also think having a decent savings, especially at the beginning, can help you a lot. You never know when you might need to pay for something quickly out of pocket. You know, maybe you'll get reimbursed later, but you know, sometimes you just have to do things when you're a mom. So I would just say, like, yeah, having a savings, having some people there that can be backups for you when you need them, and then really just self-caring too, like reminding yourself why you're doing this stuff and taking care of yourself, you know, along with being a mama. I think it's really easy for all moms, not just foster moms, to kind of lose themselves in motherhood, which can be a wonderful and selfless thing, definitely, but I think it's also really important that you take care of yourself. So that would be my advice for any single foster mamas out there. What did you do in the months leading up to foster care? I loved this question because it's something that I realized I don't think I've ever talked about on my channel. I always kind of start with like signing up for the process. I never talked about what it was like prior to signing up for the process. So I probably did a lot of probably what you guys are doing in my channel. I watched a lot of YouTube videos on foster care. There wasn't too many, especially for single foster mamas. So that's actually what inspired me to start my channel, because this is kind of the channel that I wished had existed when I was going through it. But I really just did as much research as I could. I researched on YouTube, I researched with books, I talked to people. I went online on like discussion boards and Facebook groups and really just learned all that I could to kind of give myself the confidence to take the leap. Because this is a huge decision. Like the idea of becoming a single foster mom or a single adoptive mom or just a single mom in general is a huge deal. And so I think, I needed that confidence. So I researched all that I could. I'm really type A, but I would make sample baby schedules with my work schedule. I prepared a lot. I would go thrift shopping and start stocking up on stuff. I don't know. I would try to do everything I could to make myself feel confident and ready to take that leap before I signed up for it. So yeah, and I thought about it for a while too. I honestly can't remember. It's been so long at this point, how long I waited before I signed up for foster care. But, I thought about it for a while. I did a lot of research because, again, that was a very big, major life decision. And it was something that, could potentially, and ended up for sure doing, as changing my life forever. I eventually adopted my child. So, has officially completely changed my life forever. So, it's a really big decision. So I would just say do lots of research, prepare yourself as much as possible. You don't have to go completely crazy like I did as far as making a baby schedule already or something like that. But, just being ready, especially if you're someone who's not familiar with kiddos already. I was already a nanny. I already had a degree in child development. So I was pretty familiar with what it would be like to be a mom. But if you're someone who's kind of new to kids in general, I would maybe read some parenting books, watch some videos, just, kind of get yourself more acclimated. If you could babysit or something on the weekends, that would be great. Volunteering, just anything like that to get you a little bit more comfortable. And I also would say, this kind of goes back to my general advice for foster moms, but don't feel pressured into starting something sooner than you're ready or taking kids sooner than you're ready. There is such a need, and people will try to get you to take all genders and all ethnicities and all ages and all everything. And it's okay to say no. It's okay to put boundaries on what you need. For example, me, I would love to foster school-age siblings one day. That's kind of my goal. But I don't think that would have been a good thing for me to start with. I think for where I was in life at the time, it's good that I started out with some younger kiddos for me. So just know yourself. If you feel like a baby and diapers and formula and stuff like that is not for you, and that you're not good with that, then don't take babies. If you feel like toddler age isn't good, you don't want to deal with daycare, you'd rather them go to public school, then don't take toddlers. If you feel like you don't want to deal with homework and stuff, then don't take school age. Know yourself. You want to be open to what you can take, but you also don't want to overwhelm yourself at the beginning. So it's okay to set limits, I guess is what I'm saying. I think it's good to be open when you can be. And I think in terms of things like ethnicity and gender, I think that's something that I've talked about before. I think that's something you should be open in, especially for single foster moms. I think I've heard a lot be I only want girls. And I get it. It could be scary raising a different gender than yourself, especially when you don't have someone else there to help you. And the idea of potty training a boy or dealing with boys dating girls, it can be a little scary, but you'll figure it out. All moms have that feeling, even if they're not single. So I would say be open in terms of ethnicities and genders if you can be, but maybe, with age range, maybe be a little bit more limited. But that's really just going to depend on the person. That was just something that I'm glad that I took that advice, because I originally was only going to foster girls, and obviously I ended up adopting my son. So I would just say be open, but know your limitations. Let's see, how to make a child feel safe in foster care. So with babies and toddlers, I think that just comes with meeting their needs. Being calm, knowing how to parent children with trauma. Again, that comes back to doing research. You will do some training prior to becoming a foster parent, but you should do more on your own. Read books, watch videos, learn. And I think just meeting their needs and not being too rigid. I think it's really easy, especially for someone like me who's, likes to have everything in order. Just knowing if that baby needs to be fed more than you have on your schedule, feed that baby. If that kid needs a moment to just calm down and cuddle and you're going to be a few minutes late for work, be okay with that. I think being very flexible, meeting all of those needs and just being that calm influence in that kid's life and just showing them that unconditional love, because these kids are coming from very hard places. And I think just having that patience and having that unconditional love and not being guarded. It can be scary to fully let yourself go when you know that child may be removed from you one day. But those kids really do need that unconditional, unbridled, just full-on love. So that's really my main advice for keeping kids safe. Obviously, there's tons of things you can do with older kids in terms of like making little like welcome books and, you know, being very clear about your expectations and not having too many of them and all of that. But I'm not an expert on that, obviously. I've only had Darian, and I got him when he was really young. So, but I think that there's a lot of resources out there that you can research and find stuff for that. And the last question we have today is I've had several questions over the last few weeks about doing a vlog or like a family vlog or a day in the life and that kind of thing. And I love that you guys like want to come along with us and like see our whole day. And I want to share, I want you guys to be able to meet Darian on my channel. Vlogs are I feel like vlogs are kind of hard sometimes for a couple different reasons. One, when I was a foster mom, obviously I couldn't show Darian's face, and I just really didn't want to risk anything, even with like blurring his face or something like that. I didn't want to risk doing anything that could potentially mess up his chance of being adopted with me. And obviously now he's adopted, so that's no longer an issue, but that was one of the reasons I didn't do any vlogs early on. And I also don't really want to be a vlog channel. Not to say I will never do any vlogs. I'm sure that I will. Like I said, I would love for you guys to meet my family more and see them more on this channel. And I think that will definitely be coming up soon. But, I don't think I'm ever going to be the kind of channel that's like taking you along with my day every single day, all day long. There's a lot of family vloggers out there, and I get that can be really special and fun to see that. But I personally just do not want to display my child's every waking moment on the internet. I just, I don't want to share everybody his tantrums or even all his cute moments or anything. Like I want him to have that privacy. I want him to have that respect from me. And that's nothing against any other family vloggers. I think most of them are very kind, great people. And I think it can be very helpful for other people to see different family dynamics. But for me and my channel, that's never been my goal for this channel, is to be like a mom blogger. My goal for this channel was more to be a resource for other foster and adoptive mamas. And as much as I do want to share some of my life with you guys, but I certainly don't think I'm ever going to be the kind of channel that's like every day in the life. Like I said, not to say that I'll never do a vlog. I'm sure that I will one day. But just know that that's kind of the reason why you haven't seen a bunch of vlogs on my channel. I do really respect my child's privacy and, his ability to consent to being in my vlog. And then, again, with foster care and adoption, that's kind of tricky sometimes too. And also filming with a toddler is kind of hard. Like I'm almost always, like he's asleep right now at nap time. Like I almost always am filming when he's asleep, because if I had, my tripod out and stuff when he's there, he's going to be trying to knock it down and playing with it. And, just it can be tricky. And I think that's sometimes the side of family channels that people don't see. It can be really hard sometimes to film with a lot of kiddos. But just know that's why you don't see like a bunch of vlogs on my channel or anything like that. So I had a lot of questions about that. So I just wanted to like put that out there for you guys and let you guys know kind of my feelings on that and like why you don't see a bunch of that on my channel. I hope you guys enjoyed this Q&A. If you have any more questions that you have, feel free to leave them in the comments below. I probably will do another Q&A in not too long, so definitely leave any more questions you have down there. I'll leave some of the videos I talked about linked in the description. I would love to have you subscribe if you are interested. I do all kinds of videos on motherhood, foster care, adoption, children's products, all kinds of stuff. Feel free to check out my channel. I have tons of videos on all of that, and I would love to have you on my journey. All right, bye guys.